So much for the organizer, and it is my pleasure to deliver a keynote speech at this conference. And I pretty much enjoyed the two keynote speeches by the keynote speakers, and let us switch the focus a bit away from the health impact on the pandemic, and at the same time, I would like to shift the focus a bit from the pandemic to infodemic. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the public anxiety aroused by the pandemic, especially the information like the misinformation, disinformation that is quite prevalent during the pandemic, and that is why I will focus on infodemic in my speech. And also I will talk more about the reflections and also the recommendations. Yeah, I admit that because my university takes the copyright issues very seriously, so I would like to take note that some of the materials has been, we don't have enough time, like especially the images, we don't have enough time to obtain the copyrighted reasons. So this presentation operates under the assumption that it's not for prohibited use, and this is quite adherent to the fair use of this scholarly exchange. And also before the presentation, I would like to acknowledge the contribution from my students and interns, because they have taught me a lot about the social media, everything, and they are so advanced in using the technology. And yes, we know that the technology can bring us a lot of convenience, but at the same time, it can produce a lot of societal problems. And today, so we'll talk more about it in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. And we all know that this is a really huge issue. Yeah, before it arises like 4 years ago, exactly this time, we were currently in a very huge panic all around the world, okay? So I think it is really what we called unprecedented, because there are lockdowns. We've never seen all these. This is very crucial issues, and this is really brings a lot of people. They are having a lot of panic and also anxiety, and a lot of communities have been always in the chaos, like in the hospitals, supermarkets, you name it. Why? Because the virus, the SARS-CoV-2, this is really novel, and it's a type of atypical symptoms. And all these unknown had led us say, well, what can we do? And even the physicians, medical doctors, governments, public health authorities, they don't know what to do. So as we are non-experts, so this is why there's a lot of public anxiety aroused in the general public all over the world. Why is this atypical? Because they share some symptoms. At first, when it came out, we just think, oh, they are flu. But they are not, okay? So there are some overlaps. It looks like flu, but it is not really, and it can be having a lot of huge impact on our health. So it is not just common flu, okay? And there are some common symptoms. At the same time, it is quite unique. And so we need to figure out, what is this, okay? And of course, in this digital era, okay, everyone, if we don't know what to do, we would use Google, or right now, we use ChatGPT, right? And so we will try to find out. And of course, in this information age, we seek the information. What's that? Okay, and then we Google SARS or this flu, something like that, and COVID-19 pandemic. And it came out that we have a huge amount of information. and we are bombarded by all this information. We don't know. It's very difficult, even for the medical professionals. We are so confused. We don't know which is correct information and which is not. And we are currently still bombarded by all this new information every day. So we can still imagine all those anxiety aroused by not just this novel virus, but the information related to this novel virus. And as we have recalled all this global panic, okay, during especially the first wave, okay, the first wave is really, really serious. And that's why our studies focus mainly on the first wave. But after the second wave, we know more about that, and then we have a lot of scientific evidence, and even the public governments, they exchange information, and they are more prepared to educate the general public. But let's go back to the first wave of the pandemic. We have panic buying because people say that, we worry that tomorrow maybe there's a lockdown issues. It happens in Italy, but one day it may be in Hong Kong, something like that. Okay, so there may be some panic buying in supermarkets. We have long queues all around the world. And there are empty shelves. It's so crazy, and then we don't really know what to do at that time, okay? But we just spend most of our time queuing up to pay during the first wave of the pandemic. And also holding, okay? So at that time, there are some people, I don't, okay? So they suddenly buy so many things, especially toilet papers, okay? And we don't know. So because the people were fighting for all these stocks and food and toilet papers, especially. So there are other societal problems like the price increase. Okay, if there are price increase, then people will compete for it because they worry that next week the price may goes up, etc. So. And also people will also thought about this facial mask and and other personal protection equipment, PPE, etc. As I've already mentioned at the outset, so the pandemic has brought us, of course, it has threatened our physical health. Okay, so we're worried about infection. Okay, but at the same time, there are other problems like it affects our mental health. Okay, so as a health psychologist, I care both about people's mental health at the same time also physical health. And I would like to focus more on the infodemic because this is not really invented by me. Okay, so actually the WHO, they coined the term infodemic. Okay, so in addition to what we should focus more on the pandemic, the etiology, the virus, how can we prevent it, the vaccines, injection, etc. We should also focus more on the infodemic, okay? Why? Because as we said, infodemic does compromise our mental health, okay? So we have a lot of information that has created a lot of panic and anxiety. And there are a lot of surveys that talks about the pandemic that causes the anxiety and depression, as we know, okay? So all of these are quite high compared to the pre-pandemic era. And also, apart from anxiety and depression, okay, all these mental health symptoms, the infodemic also arouses sleep disturbance, okay? So there is another word coined by, I think by some lay person, it's called chronosomnia, okay? So they talks about insomnia, okay, created by the pandemic, okay. So a lot of sleep disturbances they do, and in one of my studies, and we find that having currently bombarded by the information related to the pandemic is highly related to insomnia. And so we know the huge impact that has been created by the infodemic. Okay, so what can we do? Okay, so of course, right now we have I think even during the second wave. Okay, not even the third wave. Okay, so people will become more relaxed, and we know more about so that's the proof that if we know more about the information about something, so we have clarified all these unknown issues, then the anxiety without even taking any drugs, okay, so it will decrease. So that's the lessons learned. Who knows? Maybe in the future, touch wood, okay? In the future, touch wood, there may be other unknown viruses, okay, created or emerged. So there may be future infodemics, or even due to some other misinformation or disinformation. Okay, so there may be other infodemic. So what public health organization and governments can do to cope with the infodemic? We all know that most, if not all of us, are using social media, okay, in this digital era. Okay, and so if it is a common tool, so of course, we also need to focus more on this common used tool to help us, okay? So this is more like a double-edged sword, okay? So we can get a lot of incorrect information from this, but at the same time, we hope that the social media can also help us to distribute correct information. Okay, so social media can contribute to control the infodemic in 3 major ways, okay? And the first one is to prevent the fake news from spreading. And also it can help us, the public health, they can do the surveillance. And also, as health psychologists ourselves, we can educate the general public using social media. Okay, so let's just talk, elaborate each point more. So how can we use social media to prevent the spread of the fake news? Okay, for example, we can post the accurate and reliable information, but of course, we need some scientific evidence. And at the same time, we should, for example, cite the correct references so that if you are in doubt, then fact check, okay? So that's very important, okay? So that's the second way, okay? So if you give the information, sometimes what is more ambiguous is that we don't know the source. We don't know something like that. For example, okay? So COVID-19 is just like common flu, experts said, something like that. And then we say, who are the experts? Where can we find? Can we find it in Lancet? Okay, which issue, which volume? This is very important, okay? So we need to provide information at the same time the source, okay? So that the public can fact check, okay? Fact checking is also very important, okay? So we are doing a lot of media literacy in even primary schools right now, okay? So actually, we just teach the students that don't believe what you said. Everything is not your teacher, okay? So sometimes there are some incorrect information. So fact checking is very, very, very important, okay? So we kept telling our students, not just in the university, but right now we are doing some media literacy program for primary school students as well. Okay, so fact checking is very important. And for the public organizations or for the governments, they should have rapid response to misinformation. Okay, if there are some people, I don't know whether it's unintentionally or intentionally create some chaos based on some misinformation, so we should stop this immediately and clarify them, and collaborated with some influencers, like some experts in universities, or even the KOL, right? Yeah. So that you collaborate with them, so that if they have more influence, they have more followers in social medias, then more people will get access to this correct information. And so we need to monitor the social media and try to identify any doubtful information. Excuse me. Okay, so the second point is that we can make good use of the social media to promote public health surveillance. Okay, so we can monitor the social media conversations, and also we can detect the potential outbreaks, okay, using the data. Maybe some statisticians can help us to do the prediction, and there are a lot of models, okay, from some statisticians in Hong Kong as well. And we can also track the behavior changes, again, using a lot of data right now. And I also read some works as they look at the GPS to see the movement of the people. So they are more likely to predict what's going on. And also we can identify some high-risk populations. Again, the statistics can help us. Okay, so we know, for example, in Hong Kong, which community is having an extra high infection rate, and also the spread is pretty quick. And right now, in this information age, we can use a lot of data in the internet, etc. So all of these can help us to create a lot of models and predictions, etc. And of course, we can collaborate with some social media companies like Twitter and Facebook, and so that they can help us. For example, Twitter, they have done some if they have some suspicious information, they will have a disclaimer that so this is so they will advise people to take note that this is not verified. So whenever you post something with the keyword COVID-19, I realize that even because I'm a toy photographer, I use my IG as a channel to post some toy photographies. Okay, so actually I'm not talking about the health issues. I just took some pictures of my Lego minifigures wearing face mask, and I just mentioned the word COVID-19, and suddenly they will say that, watch out for something, and this is amazing. So whenever you have something like COVID-19, and then they'll say, hey, you need to fact check, okay? Don't believe what you say. This is amazing. So that's why I say it's unprecedented. So I think they've already alerted that there are especially a lot of mis or disinformation during the infodemic. Finally, as I already mentioned, that it is also important to educate the general public. For example, we will encourage sharing more accurate information. For example, if some of the scholars have published some important data, of course, it would be great to publish in some prestigious journal like Lancet and BMJ and New England Journal, etc. But at the same time, it is also very important for the scholars to educate the public. Okay, just like giving some press conference and let the traditional media and also the social media to disseminate the latest findings. For example, one of our colleagues, Dr. Kwok Yong Yun at that time, and he advocated using using face masks. But at the same time, actually, some scholars just rose to him and questioned why should we wear face mask. But actually, he was I think he was very clever, and then he has done some animal testing, and I don't know if you are familiar with that particular piece of research, and they just talked about they used some hamsters wearing face masks versus those who don't wear face masks, and see what's the infection rate between these two groups. And it was quite interesting that for those hamsters who have wore some face mask, tiny face mask, and they find that the infection rate was significantly lower. So this was quite convincing at the same time. And when this piece of information was out via the press conference, so actually a lot of Hong Kong people, they are discussing about this, and even my relatives who know nothing about the academic research, and they were talking about that. And I think this was very effective in educating the public. Of course, we don't need to talk about the significant figures or the statistics, but if you just highlight the takeaway messages from this piece of journal article, and I think the traditional media and also the social media has helped us a lot in talking about the highlights. So I think public sharing is important, and provide updates. Of course, sometimes we know the pandemic just changed so rapidly. Okay, so actually, I just tell my students that if you read something, at the same time, pay attention to the date. Okay, yes, we know this is this finding, but even it is a piece of scientific finding, but somehow even scholars will keep revising what it is, because it is totally unknown. And we can create some educational contents so that we can use some lay languages in order to communicate with the general public, okay? We don't need to talk about all these statistics, etc., okay? So all we need to do is to use some plain lay languages so that even the public can understand. And of course, we can engage with the public and ask them to subscribe to some reliable sources. And of course, during this program, we also encourage the behavior change, okay? So of course, we can educate them what are the information, but at the same time, we also need to let them know what are the proper way to make some change in order to avoid the infection during the pandemic. And so they should also provide some consistent and reliable communication to combat all those conflicting information and build public trust. And so they lastly, they also recommend to upload credible information to some trustworthy websites. And we also actually we also noticed that in some countries there are some differences between the governments and the public health organizations, and these make some of our participants complain in our questionnaires that what can we do? So the government said that, and then the public health organizations say that. Okay, so this is also a major source of anxiety, because they are supposed to tell us what to do, so we will rely on them, okay? But if, unfortunately, they have some conflict information, that will create even more stress and anxiety among general public, okay? So we hope that they can work together and jointly provide some consistent information for the general public. And of course, as I already mentioned, that for the social media, okay? Because it's so popular, as not even among the youngsters, okay? Even people across all ages, we all rely on the social media to communicate with others, at the same time to obtain information, okay? So it is important for us to take advantage of this popularity of social media to disseminate all this information. So because it's a very short, and actually the government and the public health organization can delegate maybe some staff to keep writing short notes, okay? And that's the popularity. But right now, maybe we can teach using AI to ask the ChatGPT to help us. And as I mentioned, that technology is a double-edged sword. It can create a lot of problems, but at the same time, they are really good tools to help us. Okay, so what IT experts do, they can do the machine learning, and also there are some novel machine learning models that they can teach the AI to separate the correct information and also the disinformation. But of course, I'm not an IT expert, so this is what I do. But I don't know how to do that using the AI technology. And lastly, I would like to talk about the risk information as well. So what can we do for the risk communication? Okay, so we will give advice, okay, professional advice to the general public. And also, we would like to let the governments and also the public health organizations what they could do for risk information. Okay, so in conclusion, it is important to utilize the social media and other communication methods to disseminate correct information so that the general public won't get confused and won't arouse a lot of public anxiety, especially if there are some unknown but life-threatening viruses occur in the future. Okay, so I don't know. Yeah, of course, there's already ended for this round, but who knows? Touch wood, in the future. So I think these measures also apply to possible future infodemics, and so we call for action for not just the individuals, but also it is very important for the public health organizations and the governments to jointly to work hard and to utilize the convenience and accessibility and the efficiency of the IT technology to acknowledge or to increase the knowledge of the public education. Yeah, regarding how to prevent from the infection and to protect their physical and mental health. Okay, so thank you for your attention.